All right, let's take a look at the second section of Chapter 2. So here we have a pamphlet published in 1609 promoting emigration to Virginia. Sorry, went too fast there. Emigration was risky. Diseases, internal religious, political, and economic tensions, and imperial wars and conflicts with the Indians all threatened harm or death. Dependent on England for protection and economic aid, most settlements would have collapsed without such support and further emigration. Because economic conditions in England were so bad, more migrants in the 17th century, more than 500,000, left England than left France or Spain. New Jersey and Pennsylvania, many of these people had already moved around the country in England, and emigration represented an extension of an increasingly mobile English lifestyle. Settlers who could afford their own passage arrived as free persons and soon acquired land. In the 1600s, however, most Englishmen arrived as indentured servants, who voluntarily surrendered their freedom for a period of time, often 5 to 7 years, in exchange for passage to America. Servants were as unfree as enslaved people in some ways. They could be bought and sold, could not marry without their owner's permission, were subject to physical punishments, and could not refuse to work. Unlike enslaved people, however, servants, at least those who survived their term of labor, which was not many for most of the 17th century, eventually became free and received freedom dues, sometimes including land. A high death rate and meager or unmet freedom dues meant that for many, the colonies were less appealing than had been anticipated. For the English, land was the basis of liberty, allowing men control over their own labor and, in most colonies, granting them the vote. The English crown also awarded land grants, sometimes quite extensive, to relatives and allies. Because land was so plentiful and so many English migrants, both free men and servants, came to America to gain land and the independence that came with it, property owners soon turned to enslaved Africans as a labor force. Thus, liberty and slavery moved together in early English America. Land in North America, of course, was occupied before the Europeans arrived. Far more settlers came to the English colonies than their Spanish and French counterparts. The English did not seek to rule or assimilate the Indian populations, but rather to remove them from land desired by settlers. Some intermingling occurred in various circumstances, but most English settlers remained obstinately separate from their Indian neighbors. English settlers' demand for additional land continued to increase exponentially. The English developed a strong sense of superiority over the Indians, and as time went by, they made certain to keep boundaries between the two groups intact. Many Eastern Indians initially welcomed English settlers, particularly for the goods they introduced to native culture, such as woolen cloth, metal kettles, iron axes, fishhooks, hoes, and guns. English settlement transformed the land and its uses, threatening the Indians' way of life with fencing, new crops, and livestock such as pigs and cattle, which often trampled Indian crops. The depletion of forests to supply wood for the English domestic market also took a toll on Indians' hunting practices. These practices led to intermittent warfare with the English. The latter replaced the local natives more completely from the land than any other European empire in the Americas. So that was the end of that section, and we'll see you next time.